What is going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to the 817 podcast, where we talk about the lovely city of Fort Worth, Texas. We get into politics, business, culture, news. If it impacts you as a Fort Worthian, we discuss it. We give you one big story, 3 short stories, wins, losses, and actions. And today we have a big story with Taylor Rehmet. He's running for SD9, and what I'm excited for, his election is this November, and an opportunity for us Democrats to get out and rock a vote before 2026. Taylor, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all for having me. I'm honored to be here. I'm hoping we can talk about some issues for working Texans and working people in Fort Worth. I'm super honored to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So we always start off asking our guests, what is your Fort Worth story? And that can range from people who just arrived here a minute ago and people who were born here and have deep, deep, deep roots. So what is your Fort Worth story?
My Fort Worth story is I arrived here in 2019, whenever I had gotten out of the military and I had gotten employed at Lockheed Martin. And so I was like, I can't make this drive. I was driving, 70 miles away, so, each way. And so I said, I am going to move closer. And I'm so glad I did. I love Fort Worth. I originally was over in over by East Chase exit.
That was
and
where
30.
I very first lived when I moved to Fort Worth, literally off of East Chase.
Yes, I love that area. Then I moved a little bit closer to downtown. I really like the downtown area, so now I live in the downtown area.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah.
How's that been, just living in downtown, seeing the action? That's like...
living in downtown, there's so many, cool places to check out, eat. Again, all my friends live in my neighborhood as well,
cool.
So it's just a really good community. It's the Greenway neighborhood. It's a historic neighborhood, and it's a really cool place to live. And I don't think I ever want to move. So
yeah, it's great proximity to downtown, but not like in the core of downtown. You have that single family neighborhood feel.
Exactly. Yes,
but you have access and even kind of walkable, but maybe there's a few highways and train tracks in between.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
Well, I remember the first time we riffed, it was at the Tarrant Young Democrats meeting, and I just got to see your energy and joy for the work. Can you kind of just give your backstory on like how'd you get to a point to where, hey, I'm going to run for Senate District 9?
When I joined at Lockheed Martin and I was a mechanic and machinist, I realized that I was super grateful for my contract. I looked at my contract when I first was hired on, and I was like, oh my gosh, there are so many benefits afforded to me through this negotiated contract, and I wanted to give back to it. So I started getting active, and I started, asking, the leadership of the union how to get involved, and eventually I ran for my local lodge as president, about 1,500 members, and
wow.
I won. Yeah, and I won. And the thing about it is I learned how to lead with courage, compassion, and clarity. So, and just being able to help other people really recharges my batteries. You know what I mean? And so I want to do that on a bigger scale. And I think that this would be the perfect opportunity to do it. There's a lot of issues that I see Texas going in the wrong way. And I know that there needs to be some change.
Yeah, and we're not like a very big union state, Texas, right? Compared to others. So it's like
putting it mildly.
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately, we're not.
Yeah, and people our age, like I think, like how do we re-energize and re-see that valley as people who don't maybe even remember ever even having that kind of access, like our grandparents or parents did.
Access in what way?
To unions.
Yes.
Most of us, I think, don't even know that that's still powerful and possible unless you work at a big core like
Right. That's a great question. And how do we get people to not only know about unions but learn where they come from? People have died for our right to organize in this country, and we do have laws that are going against unions because they work. There's tons of lobbyists that lobby against unionism and all kinds of stuff. And I think that they secured the middle class, right? So unions solidified the middle class in this country. And I want to see that continue. I want to see, because it's fallen off since then. And so to your question, if we're going to energize people to unionize and organize, we have to show them the benefits. You get guaranteed benefits in a union, right? So you get seniority, you get recall rights, and most of all, you get dignity and respect in the workplace. And a grievance procedure, which is
Well, and
you know,
like
how
you
you
said,
hold people
when you saw
accountable.
your contract, you saw the benefit of that. But
Yeah,
not everybody
absolutely.
sees that. And when I
Sure,
first
sure.
started serving on the Fort Worth City Council, they were in the process of looking at pensions.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the firefighters have a union, and the police have a union, but the general employees do not. And so I watched general employees were at the table, but
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have, the organized union the way that those other two employee groups did.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard from general employees on the regular that they didn't feel like they had as equal of a seat at the table as those two organizations that did have that union benefit. And
right.
then some of those people are people who fight against unions for other people. So
Well, they say if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu more than
Yeah.
likely. And I'm seeing that for working Texas and right here in our great state. I really hope we can push back and fight against that, and just building union density in Texas is a great way to do that. You're looking at future leaders, I think, and I think that we should have more union members running for office.
I know you have spent a pretty cool journey from being the union leader to really kind of getting out the DC. I mean, tell me more about just like your journey into politics. I just remember you and I talking about how you really weren't into politics when you started, but now just the
Sure.
access as the union to now. I think that's a really cool story.
I told you that I became the president of my local lodge of about 1,500 folks, and whenever I was doing that for a couple years, I had the opportunity to run for another office within my union for the Texas State Council.
Wow.
So our Texas State Council of Machinists represents over 30,000 members, IAM members, and IAM stands for International Association of Machinists. So when I got elected to that position, I really got to see the information, and I was exposed to a lot of direct experiences with politicians and their attack on unions. So that's really what enthralled me even more, and I'm like, what better way to have an effect than to get elected myself and be that voice.
Yeah, I think you also, when you get close to people who are elected, you recognize pretty quickly that you could do that too.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of times when you're
Right.
at a distance, you think that they have some special skill or some special, information or knowledge or education
Right.
that put them up there.
Yes.
And you're like, you start to see them closer up and you're like, wait a minute, I can do
yeah,
that.
we look at the other candidates.
Yeah, and
it's
we're-
like, yeah, it's
you take
it's
a look at
scary list over there.
Right. You take a look at the other, candidates and even other people in office, and some of them are goofy. It's like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? And
Yeah.
it's honestly getting dangerous. Some of the ways they're, governing. So.
Yeah. I think I had a lot of worry about not being able to do a job when I first got into elected
Yeah.
office. And then I would go into meetings and be like, I know more than like twice as much as these
Right.
people. I could do a much better job. And then
Right.
when you watch them actually on the House and Senate floor, and just it's like a clown car.
It is.
So good luck with all that.
Thank you. I'll need it, but that's okay. We're gonna really do something here.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, give kind of your pitch or policies that you're looking to really kind of lean on, once you win.
Probably, first one that comes to mind are schools. They're so underfunded. You look at our veterans; they need help. We're a veteran-dense state, and most of all, working Texans, they need help.
I think the veteran rich thing too is Fort Worth really plays to that and talks about how a lot of retired people from the military end up retiring here because they like
Absolutely.
it. And so the city has added like a veterans affairs person to the staff.
That's good.
And so I think doing those things, but then also putting your money where your mouth is.
Right.
Are you getting impacted, your seat, with all of what's happening at the state level with the changing of the maps? And also I know recently the county commissioners are looking to actually reduce early voting sites during your special election in November. But how are you guys navigating all the noise that's happening at the state level in Texas?
That's a good question. It's taxing, it's exhausting, and yes, we are being affected, especially whenever there's talk that they are going to be reducing the polling locations. I believe I looked up some data. I mean, you mind if I refer to it? So I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me refer to the data because this is just happening. So what I'm seeing here is early voting so far has a proposed to reduce from 44 to 24 sites based on the census tract info in the early voting locations. White majority areas are seeing a 35% reduction in early voting locations. Non-white majority locations are seeing a 50% reduction.
But none of this is racial at all, right? This is what they keep telling us, that this is not based on race, but clearly...
I think I'm going to pay attention to what they're doing and less to what they're saying, because
even if they're intending it to not be racist, it just is racist. So.
Right, exactly. Like if I hurt your feelings and I didn't intend to, I'm still going to say sorry, right? I mean, because you did something, and it's not okay.
And man, I just think about, because when you look at the map from a Fort Worth perspective, when you look at the early voting areas where they're eliminating those places, and you see where the green ones are, they're out of the loop of Fort Worth. So that 820 loop where it's predominantly black or brown communities and population, in that loop you're talking Como, Stop 6, East Side, a lot of areas that now those are getting out to the suburbs. Where, I think less, like you just said, in the data, and those are really stories.
Right.
And I think our biggest thing is, I know your Fort Worth story starts in 2018, similar to me, 2017.
Okay.
But I'm such a big, I'm blown away how the city is allowing the county to impact and take so much of our power away. We're 40% of the county, and yet we're the ones where our power is getting moved into the suburbs, and the suburbs now have more voting power in the county. These resources that are getting eliminated, you look at what happened at the Human Resources Department, that the services they took away last meeting, those impact Black and Brown Fort Worthians. So it's not just voices, it's resources. Yes. How do you see yourself representing Fort Worth, Arlington, another? Those are two areas that are 57% of the our county. So how do you see, wherever you kind of land in this, representing all voters, regardless of race?
So we have to represent everyone, right? When you're elected, you have to look at everything, and I think that, to your point of suburbs having more, power, voting power, and influence over a city, to me is completely backwards. I mean, the population should decide what happens, the majority, right? And of course, we have to think of everyone when we're, governing. I think that we have to organize and we have to speak out. We have to, project power, and that's in numbers, right? And that's where the work starts.
It's refreshing to hear you say, I want to represent everybody, because that's not what a lot of people in office now are saying. They're like, I got into office, I was elected by this group of people, and I am here to make this group of people have more influence.
Yes.
And so I think it's refreshing to hear.
Yeah. And can you give, like, where I'm also lost, just to give context, everyone, it's like, this guy's running against, like, the leader of Patriot Mobile. All right? Like, the Patriot Mobile is the people who made what happened at Keller, where, Keller was basically trying to resegregate their school district. Patriot Mobile is a very dangerous, like, advocacy group. But why are leaders, like, I'm just surprised, like, why aren't they finding new politicians? Why are they coming for this seat? And you really are only saving grace of possibly going off of this right-wing extremism that's seeping in Tarrant County every single day.
Well, I'd also like us to have more context on, like, because this is a unique election. There's not time to go through the normal primary process. So I'm curious if you could talk about what got us to this point and how that plays a role in how you have to campaign.
Sure. So I believe it was June 30th. The prior senator had to vacate to take the appointment of comptroller, which triggered the vacancy to get the special election and all these things. And seeing as how it's such short time,
because the election's in November, right?
The election is in this November. Mm-hmm. So this is going to be a jungle-style election, which means there's no primary. It's just, however many Democrats file and however many Republicans file. And so far it's just me as on the Democrat side, and there's two Republicans who, I think are a bit on the goofy side of things, if not a little more. So it's the first of 50%.
Gotcha.
And I think that, I'd like to win 50% outright and not going to runoff. It's likely that could happen, but it's also likely I could be in a runoff with one of them.
I guess the one good part about 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat is hopefully the Republicans split each other's vote and you get.
It's looking like that's going to happen. I've seen some of the attacks on both of them, and
they can out some crazy mail.
They can go ahead and do that. I'm going to go worry about working Texans and how I'm going to go talk to working Texans, and I'm going to worry about them. So they can worry about all the fighting and stuff. I know where my fight is.
Yeah, with only 3, I think there is a possibility of winning outright.
Totally.
And the first race I was in was a special election in a non-election time. There was no other races on the ballot except for City Council District 9, and there were 6 of us. And I was like hoping to win outright, but that didn't happen. I had to go to a runoff.
Okay.
So hopefully you can do that ground game thing and not have to even have a runoff. That would be fantastic.
That would be fantastic.
You said June 30th, so that makes sense why they're just jumping in their extremist leaders into the game.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the time to actually talk to normal people to convince them about their crazy propaganda, so they have to go jump and run in this seat. Can you talk more about what's at stake? What are we looking at here? Because I want to give people some grace here in the sense of when I looked at Fort Worth's last election, we had low voter turnout. 6% of Fort Worth voted.
Wow.
But Tarrant GOP went 0 for 11. We got Deborah Peoples on District 5. Yep. She was going against $183,000 on another person, and Patriot Mobile Dollars was behind that person too. So, in a weird way, I know you sprawl all the way out to the burbs, but when Fort Worth also votes and shows out, that 50% can come from if Fort Worth sees its power to really help lean you over to that side to get out those votes. But is there anything else you kind of see in the sense of all your travels around the county and what kind of people are telling you about what they're needing?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest ones, I talked to some teachers.
You mentioned public school was one of your big priorities. What was your education background?
So I'm a product of public school, and I think it's a great thing that we have. I think we need to properly fund it so that it can be as great as it can be. But I've talked to teachers. Teachers are telling me all kinds of stuff. I mean, obviously we know they're underfunded. They got to buy school supplies for their kids. They are having overcrowded classrooms. And in some ways I'm thinking, okay, if I had a kid in a class, right, and they're in an overcrowded public school, are they getting the proper education, and is it even maintaining their education, or are they losing? And I think that this is scary. This is our future.
And what's scary about this too is the other component. The Patriot Mobile people, they're literally trying to attack libraries, attack resources, make teachers afraid to teach with the autonomy that they have. And so it's just and let me be clear too, they're already pumping in some big dollars into their campaigns, right? What's the other, what's that about? Yeah.
One of the opponents, Lee, she got what, 400 something thousand within 48 hours, Dan Patrick's endorsement, and I think it was 5 donors, or so, somewhere in that range. So it's just money no working class person has to just throw into a race, and to me that's extremely concerning, because I feel like you should be represented by your peers, right? And none of my peers just have that kind of fundraising capability and money to put in their campaigns. So that to me is concerning, and I say well, how do you hold someone with that that accountable? And I feel like our politicians aren't being held accountable here in Texas. No matter your political background, I think that if someone has enough money to basically fund their own elections and they don't need donation. I mean, one less thing you can hold them accountable to,
they're just accountable to those big donors.
Absolutely, and
we were talking outside of this studio about potentially some legacy Republicans in Tarrant County being interested in, and when they hear there's another voice outside of the extremism right leaders that are trying to prey on this seat. Have you felt like you've talking to some Republicans or moderates around what I love about you is you're actually progressive as a person. Like me and you talking.
Yeah.
You came to the Gather one time. You also talked at we talked a couple times at a meetings, and I love how progressive you are. But you're able to also go across the aisle and meet people.
Absolutely.
What's that been looking like?
Yeah. Well, it's been looking great. Honestly, I've been blown away. It was something I didn't expect to get. Again, they see me focused, right? They see me focused on working issues, and even the conservative, leaders. I'm not going to name any names, but seriously, they've reached out to me and been like, hey, we like what you're doing. We think that this is the right direction. And again, I can't please everyone, but I want to help everyone, and I think that not only am I the person to do it, but with the team that I have, it's going to be a great thing. I think we can, reach every voter, no matter what affiliation you have. I'm going to try and help you.
I've been hearing from a few reasonable Republicans as well, so I think that is something.
These are retired people. There's no such thing as reasonable ones anyway, I imagine. So these are retired people. Yes. Like today, they're off the rocker.
Yes, and some of the people that have reached out to me, yes, they're just active, Republicans as in that space. They're not elected or anything like that. So.
Yeah, and I imagine
willingness to reach across the aisle, talk to everybody. The fact that you listen to everyone and understand that you can't. It's true, you cannot please everyone, but you can listen to what people have to say and make decisions based on things that you hear in the community.
We have to really find what unites us and focus on that, and I think we can bring Texas in a really good way.
Yeah, and just to give it to Fort Worth's perspective here, I mean, we have representation at the House with a guy like Nate Scatzline, who also considered the seat at one point, right? Mm-hmm. Nate Scatzline, as we've all talked about on this pod, you're talking about someone who tried to arrest independent bookstores for having LGBTQ history and anti-racism books in their bookstore. This is what Leah Wambsbams, or however you say the last name, like these are the kind of people who are preying on these seats. So when you talk about how frustrating Tim O'Hare is, Matt Krause is, Manny Ramirez is, and the county, you're just seeing it, without having a Taylor running for this seat. You're talking about that kind of people preying on our state in a city like Fort Worth, the 11th largest city, a majority minority city. You don't want that representation as our leaders at the state.
Yes.
And that's why this Taylor vote is so important for anyone listening to this. Obviously, we should be donating for Taylor, getting his campaign.
Yes.
And as well as, though, like...
I've already done that.
Yeah, yes.
and volunteer, too.
Yeah, it's so important. Yeah, it's just, guys, if we can have a win in November of this year and show a signal to Trump, who's trying to mess with the state, with Greg Abbott, who's trying to give us some rigged maps, Judge Tim O'Hare trying to go to, one meeting. This is the moment to show, hey, guys, this is a signal for 2026 and the future. This is why I believe, you coming on this pod was so big for us, is because you're representing an early signal that we could deliver to people that you don't mess with Texas.
That's right.
And so I'm so glad you're showing up to the jungle.
And
actually going to go
like
head to head with these guys. And it means a lot to have someone like you do that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to fight. I fought for my workers in my union. I'll fight for working Texans. To me, it recharges my batteries. Standing up for those that, don't have enough or need help. I think that's true leadership. I think that's what Texas needs, and that's what I'm going to bring to Texas when I'm elected to Senate District 9.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Good job. So that was a great interview that we just had with Taylor Rehmet, and we're excited for the prospect of him running for Senate District 9 and wish him all of the best. I'm sure that we'll talk about him going forward because we have until November 4th when that special election is going to take place. And I guess we should be grateful that we're actually having a special election to fill a seat, because down in Houston, I think there's some seats that they've just been holding hostage, and not filling them. Yeah. Those are solid Democrat seats, so I think there's a reason that they're doing that. But I think they must think that they can just fill this one and not have it Democrat, but hopefully we will. So I think we mentioned in that interview that we had a big party last night celebrating the 5th birthday of the podcast, which Only EJ has been here for all 5 of those years. Congratulations and happy birthday.
Yes, we did it. That was
Yep.
that was an epic time. Shout out to Katrina Carpenter and the Carpenters Cafe.
Absolutely. And we need to tell everybody they are open for breakfast and lunch, I think, every day.
Tuesday to Saturday.
Okay,
Tuesday to Saturday. Breakfast and lunch.
You can drop in and get smoked chicken salad anytime,
Yes.
as long as they haven't sold out, because that
Yes.
happens, because it's very popular.
And they did such a good job of turning the restaurant where people were like, oh, is this an event space? No, it's a restaurant, and it's one of me and my wife's favorite restaurants to go to on a regular basis. And it's just such a good community group. And when they have the booths out and the waiters out, it's just great service. And so shout out to Katrina for making that happen for us.
It was fantastic. And then the turnout for the party was amazing.
It was wild.
I think I spent the whole evening telling people who other people were, because they were like, I've been to some gathers and I've listened to the podcast for a long time, or I'm part of this group, or I'm part of that group, and I heard about this party, but they didn't all know each other.
Yeah, one of my favorites, and honestly, like he could have been an op and someone who was just there spying on us, but it was a guy named Paulie was his name.
Yes, he talked to me too.
Yes. He seems like he said, hey, I came from Brooklyn, but I grew up here. And I just moved back and I listened to like 2 episodes and I heard you're having a party, so I'm here. I'm like, what's up, man? So that was like one of my favorite interactions. And then meeting a couple people who were like, oh, I listened to the pod, and this is the first time I actually met them or knew who they were. So that was really cool too.
A lot of new folks, a lot of awesome folks that, people like do a lot in Fort Worth who just had never met each other. So it was very fun.
That
getting
always
to introduce-
amazes me.
Yeah.
I'm constantly like, you guys haven't met before now? How is that even possible? And there was a lot of that last night too. So.
And the energy was great.
Yeah.
Just like the overall, like so much enthusiasm and joy.
Yep. It was packed in there. Like at one point, everyone was shoulder to shoulder, and it got so loud, I was only hearing like every 5th word. So if we had a conversation, sorry, I don't know if I heard anything
and I'm
you said.
a little raspy. I'm clearing my throat and trying to get rid of that, because we did have to talk at kind of a high level, volume-wise, to be heard in the space. And it was a little warm to be outside, but we even had people outside. Because,
Well, you could hear each other out there.
Yeah,
exactly.
I liked it. I think we should just have a party every year.
Yeah.
Every 817
Absolutely.
day.
Yeah, it was epic. It was
Well,
epic.
and it would be cool if we could do it on actual
Yeah.
817.
Because then, that would be. But then it's like Mondays and Tuesdays and like.
Who
I don't
cares?
know. I mean, 6 to 9 is
Isn't
not
it
too
bad?
late on
I
a
agree.
work day. We could pull that off.
I agree. I'm always down to turn up.
We're
Any
down
day of
here.
the-
I
any day
mean,
of the
we're
week.
here early on Sunday morning after having had a party and recording this podcast. So I think.
Plus,
we'd be
everyone
good.
could show up in their Morgan Mercantile 817 merch.
Yes.
Another big thing is, if you could also, we were shouting out some of our like friends and people. So we also had Tarrant for Change there, and so in the show, if you weren't able to make it, we were asking people to support grassroots organizers like Tarrant for Change, and so it would be awesome if we just again, if that was a politician's event, people would see hope and be running a campaign to support and putting money behind a politician
Showing up with checks.
Yeah. we didn't have politicians there. We had people there, and it was people powered.
We had one politician there.
Yeah, we
Chris
did.
Nettles was
Yeah, we did have Chris Nettles there. Shout out Chris for being there. But so the kicker is like, we still need checks and supports for our grassroots organizers like Tarrant for Change, who's really been crucial in doing a lot of this work with DEI and the letters and the organizing with the racial gerrymandering. Again, a lot of this like early work that you see happening in the 817 pod and 817 gather comes from grassroots organizers. So go ahead and make sure you're supporting those individuals. I know sometimes it feels like you want to go give money to the Democratic Party or go to some fancy politician, but these grassroots organizers are really doing the work that allows people to move like we're moving. So make sure you make that happen.
So I guess the first story we have to talk about is that the Tarrant County Commissioners Court has on their agenda, we're not sure exactly when, but we want people to be prepared that it could be Tuesday, the
This
day
Tuesday.
after you are listening to this pod, a item to reduce the voting locations. And this did come up in our interview this morning because it's going to have an impact on the election in November of 2025.
a big impact. They're
Absolutely.
wanting to cut 40% of the voting locations. That's insane.
And as our guest pointed out, it's a higher percentage in Black and brown communities.
Mm-hmm.
So while they keep saying that the things that they're doing are not racially based, they keep doing things that seem to be pretty racially based.
Yeah, and one of the things is that all of the university campuses, they're removed as polling locations, so making it harder for young people to get out to vote. The new polling locations that they're putting in are all outside of the loop, so it's making it easier for the suburbs to vote, harder for people inside the loop, in the urban core to vote.
Like, yes, all seems very intentional.
And what Taylor said is this is a strategy for what's the impacts, right? They're going to pull data from what happens here so they can see what they can do in 2026 to continue to suffocate the vote and not allow people to be spoken. Again, and I mean, do we live in a real democracy in Texas right now? He just talked about like $400,000 from 5 people to the person he's running against, plus limiting election sites in black and brown places in the city. Like, this is just showing the frustration and why people lose hope in voting is because how rigged the game is. And so but what I try to say in that interview is like, I feel like Democrats are becoming hyper educated voters, and we're becoming a big chunk of voters as well. Like, you think of like the progressive, college educated, and those people are actually holding Fort Worth and Tarrant County a lot of times in these special elections. So I still feel pretty hopeful for him to make some magic happen. But this is a shame, and it's a shame that this is just being slid in on Tuesday, and we all found out yesterday that this is going to be on the agenda.
Yeah.
It's diabolical. Like, Republicans know that their extremism is unwanted, their policy is unpopular, and the only way that they can continue to hold on their last grasp of power is to just rig the system in every possible way. Racistly gerrymandered maps, making it so hard to vote that people just don't even bother anymore, so that the few people who do, they vote for Republicans and then just let things keep getting worse.
I'll be reaching out to my county commissioner because I was moved from District 1 to District 4. And in the last time that we had this before the county commissioners and they were looking to cut voting locations, he stood up for keeping the college campuses and said that he was not in favor of reducing those. And so my hope is that he will be in that same position this time and not be reducing those locations.
If I remember correctly, last time, yes, it was cutting polling locations, but it was just at college
campuses.
But now this is way more than that. So if he had a problem with just the college campuses, he better have a problem with how many more places there wanted.
And I think his comments even spoke to he wasn't in favor of reducing places for people to vote. So if that is the case, then he should be not in favor of reducing places for people to vote this go around too.
Well, that's what's so frustrating about if this is on Tuesday. We don't have the ability to organize and keep them accountable, right?
I mean, if you're listening to this, you better get out and say something immediately. But
but even us who are in the know found out two days ago.
Yeah.
So it's like our power isn't able to recognize, and that's why it's so important to have city officials and staff people who are staying connected to grassroots organizers, so that we can prepare for things. How do you prepare? I mean, this would be a great moment to reactivate the Latino population to go after Manny Ramirez. Like, hey, these are taking out our voting locations in our neighborhoods and you're pushing them out into the suburbs. But that's the part of this is too quick for something that's so dangerous.
And also, if they get away with it this time, then you're right. Like in 2026, they're like, oh, we'll just keep the same number of polling locations, and they're going to ignore the decades of how many polling locations that we have had.
Yeah, I didn't realize how tied to their polling locations people were and communities were until I ran for office. And there were people who would come to me and say they're moving it from this school where we've been voting for decades to another place, and that's really going to affect people. They'll show up, and if it's not a polling location, they may or may not try to find where they should go. Where is the new place? And, as someone who votes every time and would track it down no matter what, I don't think that everybody has quite that mentality. And so making it harder to vote is definitely going to reduce the number of people who show up to vote.
Exactly, because our elections office website is not good. It does not make it as easy as it should be to find where your polling place is. And sometimes the information just isn't correct. Like last election, I showed up for early voting at the same place that I always vote, and they told me, nope, it's too late. And I'm like,
oh, did they close before the time?
It says on the website, like, come on.
Yeah, and I want to be clear here about Fort Worth leaders need to be doing something. I am tired. I know they don't have power to the county,
but they get elected in these same polling locations. So if they make it harder this time, even though there's no city council up for election, then it's going to be harder in 2027. Like everyone who gets elected for anything is affected. So everyone should be out talking about this.
But it's just another, right, with the racial gerrymandering. Tens of thousands of black or brown people's county vote does not matter at the level it did before the racial gerrymander. When we talk about racial gerrymandering and we talk about 50% of the locations being reduced for black and brown people, we're talking about Fort Worth. Fort Worth is constantly allowing our power to be pushed to the suburbs, and our leadership is just allowing it to happen. When they eliminate resources and services, these are black and brown working class people in Fort Worth that utilizes these services. And the silence of our mayor, because her base at the end of the day is the right-wing extremist that votes for Tim O'Hare, like she can't stand up and challenge them, and she's allowing that to impact our city. And that I believe her silence over this year up into 2026 will impact Fort Worth for at least a decade on us getting out of this to have true representation ever again at the county level. There should be so much more accountability to how freely she is walking on allowing Tim O'Hare to just remove Fort Worth's power. It's dangerous.
I mean, I remember when people were first expressing concern about Tim O'Hare, and I had people who they know a lot about politics, and they literally thought, oh, there's a lot of big cities in Tarrant County, and so he's not going to be able to have that much of an impact. But that's clearly not true. And so to your point, these big cities are letting the county let the rural suburban areas wag the dog, basically, and not get the things that urban cores need. So, yep, I agree with you on that. So this does kind of touch what our second short story is, and that is that the city of Fort Worth just had the city manager roll out the proposed budget for this upcoming year. And that budget is impacted by Tarrant County because they set the property values in our community. And so whatever our tax rate is based on those property values. And that is the budget for the city of Fort Worth.
The thing that I thought was the most silly about this budget is they wanted to brag about they were lowering the tax rate from 0.6725 to now 0.67, which is going to amount to a grand total of an average $20 per household saved. That's nothing. I would much rather pay $20 and have more services. Like, it is a bigger budget than last year because there is more quote-unquote growth. But I don't know. It just seemed silly to me how they're so obsessed with saying that they're lowering the tax rate that it's not worth it.
I mean, you have to break it down and see what it is we're actually talking about. I think that residents of Tarrant County, residents of Texas are so averse to taxes, and the leadership has been so set on just reducing every form of service that a county, a state, a city provides, that this is like what we've gotten into. And when you talk about what your taxes pay for, the quality of life things, when you talk to residents, they want all these things. You just have to put two and two together that's what pays for those things.
Well, and also the thing that's so silly is that city council is so eager to brag that we lowered the taxes, but if the valuation just skyrockets every year, you're still paying more taxes.
Yeah.
So like nothing is actually getting accomplished other than the budget keeps getting tighter and tighter, and we have less money available for the things that makes Fort Worth livable.
Yeah. And we haven't raised the tax rate since 1995. We have doubled in population since, and we're bragging that we've dropped our expenses at $20 a resident when we need to be.
Well, no, you're saving.
Saving $20 a resident. And so again, I think going to the mayor's kind of language in here, in my opinion, is here's what it feels like watching the mayor throughout all of this. is I think the mayor's stuck. I think she's stuck in a blue city that is clearly becoming progressive and clearly ready for a new chapter. And then she's being pressed by this Tim O'Hare extremism. She's no longer living in a Glenn Whitley world. She's living in a Tim O'Hare world who's now goals to lower property taxes. They operate in a Republican Party that hates the government anyways.
Yeah, they want to get rid of it.
And so you're talking about 30 years of just not giving your cities any services. And then, but she knows her base is that extreme right. So she won't stand up to it. Yeah, she's, Leah Wamsbands, the Patriot Mobile person, Taylor Rehmet, endorsed Maddie Parker. Now, do I think that's a part of the base that they won't touch? And now when you go to quote unquote old moderate Republicans, it's the property tax crew. So now you have the extreme right Tim O'Hare Christian nationalists plus the don't raise my property taxes stuff. This is her base. And again, she is covering her ass on the cost of the city not living up to its potential.
And if you
that is where we are right now.
You also need to go, and this is wonky and it might be boring, but if you look at the article and see where cuts are being made, it's important things, things that have been beneficial to the city. So the neighborhood improvement dollars, they had a neighborhood improvement program that actually brought funding into neighborhoods that had been historically underserved and ignored. And that program grew to being 2 neighborhoods. And they cut it back to 1 neighborhood in the last budget session. And then they were supposed to relook at it this session or this year. And they're not. They are having a hard time delivering everything that were in those neighborhood improvement programs. So that department actually asked them to revisit in 2027. But this is not where we should be cutting. This is literally where we should be adding. And I think that that's unfortunate that we don't have the capacity to deliver what it is that we need to be adding in these areas to improve the quality of life. But to your point, we've been cutting the budget in Fort Worth since the recession in 2008. We have never gotten back up to the levels of staff to carry out a proactive approach to delivering services to have a city that needs to be a city of 1 million people served well. And every year they start off right off the bat with the city manager asking every department to find 1% to decrease when we're growing.
Yeah.
So I think Chris Nettles brought this up in the discussion about DEI. They cut that whole department and reallocated all of that money to various other places. And then there's providing EMS services, which is going to be a whole nother ball of wax with an expense that we never had before, including bringing MedStar into the fire department and all of that growing.
If I can go on a little tangent real quick. Every time I see an article about how the city is spending money, the comments are filled with people being like, but what about the roads? What about the roads? And it's like, hey, I agree with you. The roads need repairs, but it's because we don't have enough money to do it, because the roads don't always pay for themselves, because getting people around in single occupancy vehicles and spreading them far out where there are no other transit options, it's a losing battle. The more we focus on car-centric design in the city, the more the cost of roads just eats into the budget of what we can be doing. If we have more walkable neighborhoods, if we have more public transit where the roads aren't being abused by single occupancy vehicles as much as they are, then we'll have more money to do all the other things. We won't need to increase the budget as much as we do need right now. And it's just because of cars. They're so bad.
But I would encourage everybody to go look at this breakdown that shows the adopted budget in 2025, the recommended funding for 2026, and the percentage change, and see where the major cuts are happening. Because neighborhood services is one of them.
We are not in the top 25 of city budgets.
Yeah, 11th largest city.
And we don't crack the top 25.
And while you might look at the budget that has been laid out as the proposed budget and think, well, it's done, it's not.
No.
There are public meetings that will be happening in our neighborhoods, in each district, where you can go in and advocate for where you think funding shouldn't be cut and where you think funding maybe should be shifted over to. So there is a public engagement piece to this, and that can be
But
a
how
call
much
to
of that
action.
budget do you get to move?
Technically, it can all be moved, but very little of it actually gets shifted. In my opinion, the thing that would be best for people to go to these meetings and say, I would rather you increase my taxes if it means that we get these services. You're going to get a lot of shocked looks from city staff, but it's something that they need to hear, where saving $20 is not worth it if our neighborhoods aren't going to be invested in, if we're not going to have the funding to actually fix the roads or the funding to hire the city staff that we need to implement all of these things that we need to get done.
Yeah, and I will say there's a couple council members who have suggested cutting things like public art and cutting things like
absolutely not
public transportation.
Absolutely not.
And because of the fact that every single comment that you see when people are talking about city services is do something about the roads, there are council members who think we should just shift all that money to taking care of roads that have been historically under repaired and have gotten to a point where they are in bad shape. But that's the need to continue to maintain things that we already have. And I think there's a big shift out of property management, which I think goes to maintaining property that the city already owns. And that's a reduction of 2.08%. So
that's so dangerous because those buildings are already underfunded. Like
I literally thought of you when I read it because of the Community Arts Center.
Exactly.
And I think we are building new facilities in the more far-flung areas of our city.
But they're going to need maintenance too. And we've already ignored maintenance on the old buildings that we already have.
Yeah. So all of that needs to be baked into a budget ongoing, the maintenance of things that already exist, as well as building the shiny new things.
Yeah. This is why a growth-only mindset is so dangerous, because you forget about okay, we've grown, but we still have the cost of the things that we already are doing. Like we have to maintain things, and that costs money, and over a long period of time. It's just so dangerous to not think about the long term when it comes to budgets.
A member of the Gather sent me an interesting message saying if the current rate is 67 cents, and based on what is on the city's website about the tax rate, they could raise the rate to 0.73 cents and not have to go to voters. That's 6 cents, way above the 4 cents that got mentioned in the council meeting for DEI. So
I'd be A-okay with it. I want my taxes to be going towards things that make the city livable.
Yeah. And I think the other issue is that there are council members who want a no new revenue tax rate. And so they're going to be advocating for that. And that's basically lowering it to the point where they don't get any additional new revenue. And there are a couple council members that advocate for that every year. And it may be that city management is trying to navigate that. And this is like a offering of, we're going to lower it. But if he went in with a no lowering it at all, then he would have a harder battle with the people who want no new revenue rate.
Yeah, and there was a recent opinion article, and I'm not going to dive into the story, but I saw the title of Fort Worth DEI vote reveals high cost of federal money gravy train. So it's talking about what could have been was agreed upon during DEI. It was a little bit of a budget community feedback event because even the people who were anti-DEI, several of them were like, we're really relying on federal dollars to run this city. And then if you look at state dollars, and that's what, in a weird way, Republicans say they want low government, but really now we're just relying on bigger government, and we actually have no autonomy of our city's future under this Republican regime that's been here for 30 years.
Yeah, and they used to be all about local control, but they are not anymore.
Yeah.
The locals started doing things they didn't like, so they're like, "Ooh, we got to rein that in."
Crazy times.
So the county is also budgeting at the moment, and they've made some cuts and some changes, and they've gotten rid of some departments that we've talked about in the past, and they seem to be on that same trajectory of wanting to reduce. And I believe that the article talks about the fact that Tarrant County, with them wanting to lower the property tax rate and tighten their budget, it's going to make some changes with how they fund nonprofits. I think they're also relying on nonprofits to do some of the things that the county used to do. And I believe, Wesley, you were saying that there's some impact on what the city's funding because of the cuts that the county's making with regards to mental health.
Yeah, because if the county's cutting the funding, but we still need those services, and Fort Worth has a department to help with that, well, then that just increases the amount of work that needs to be done and the amount of funding that's required. So the tighter that we get squeezed from the federal level, from the county level, but we know that we need that, then the harder it gets for the city to pay for it, especially if we're still so obsessed with lowering the tax rate.
And you have that's what's so frustrating about the Councilwoman Martinez excuse about services. Because she's like, oh, well, the county just took away services. We can't take away services. And it's just like this, it's looking at the problem in a reactionary, small-minded, like, oh, well, we got to save at least what we have. When the system is like, no, we don't have to be in this situation.
Exactly.
If we just build a different narrative in Fort Worth and convince people, yes, we might raise the property taxes, but we have more freedom to operate like Fort Worth.
Yeah.
And do you want to operate like Fort Worth, or do you want to kiss the ring at D.C., whoever's the president? Fort Worth? What do you want to do? You want freedom to be Fort Worth? Then
freedom to meet the needs of our residents.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to the point of having some of the nonprofits take over some of these things, there was a whole conversation with some speakers at the Commissioners Court who said nonprofits are not in a position to be able to do things the way the county is able to do, because a lot of it is a reimbursement model. So you have to spend the money and then ask to be reimbursed. And most of those nonprofits do not have money sitting in a bank to allow them to do that.
Totally.
And so they're just basically stuck. So this rental assistance cuts and other utility help, and asking nonprofits to take that over and making the cuts before they've figured out how the nonprofits are going to take that over is just leaving a gap at this point. So in their desperate need to constantly cut and reduce government, they're leaving vulnerable citizens of this community in a really bad position.
And what drives me crazy about individualism, this is such a lack of we instead of me. That's been a motto of the pod forever.
Yeah.
But it's like when you go to these town hall and you watch these council members, it's a bunch of people complaining to them about a thing they need done, while at the same time they don't want to raise their taxes to actually get those things done. And it's just such an individualistic, to me, it's like when you take the time off to come to a place to complain about the thing that directly impacts you, but then when it comes to you to show up to actually deliver on a vote, a bond, or whatever, to amplify your city, you're the same people who say no to that, but then expect your road to get fixed. Like the individualness and selfishness of that mantra, this is why I think I could never be a city council member, because I would just say that to them. They can come complain to me and be like, well, that's what happens.
I have been saying lately. Yeah. When I'm on social media, when people say things that are completely out of left field or don't understand where it is things are coming from, I'm like, just so you know, and I'm trying to educate the masses. And half the time, those people are not even looking for a real answer.
Yeah.
They're just looking to
complain. But the other people reading it might
Yes.
be educated. Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Well, we do got some good news to move in, possibly, with short story number 3.
Yeah.
What do we got here with transit?
Yeah, this one kind of flew under the radar for me because the headline seemed so bland, but then when Anne was explaining it to me, I realized the possibilities at hand.
Yeah, we've talked multiple times about the Regional Transportation Council, which is an organization that's housed in the North Central Texas Council of Governments. It's made up of 40 elected officials across 13 counties, and they deal with a large pot of money that goes to a lot of different things, but transportation, roads, and transit is part of that. And so, as Wesley said, this article is titled North Texas Leaders to Come Up with Transit 2.0 Recommendations. Well, unless you dive into the article, you're not going to think a whole lot of that, although it does say transit, so that piqued our interest, obviously. Yeah. So they are looking to create a subcommittee that will be tasked with reviewing ideas that will help shape how the area spends $217 billion.
That's worth repeating. $217 billion in transit infrastructure.
Yes.
Not roads.
Well, they could include improvements to roads that make transit more smooth and run better. So
like bus lanes, bike lanes.
Yes.
But this is specific to public transit.
Right.
Huge.
So various public transit projects through 2050. So a long time horizon. So that money isn't all going to be available tomorrow. Yeah. But it's definitely encouraging that they've put this together. So they've identified a chair and a vice chair, and then they've asked the RTC members that are interested in serving on this subcommittee to express interest between now and August 21st. So I I am putting out a call to all of the representatives in Fort Worth to make sure that at least one of them is on this subcommittee, and preferably my council member, Elizabeth Beck, who has transportation planning background and expertise.
Yes, because we need to make sure Fort Worth has a loud voice at the table, and preferably someone in the urban core who can speak about what it's like for a big city to have access to this interconnected infrastructure.
And there's benefits to everyone, even if you're not yourself going to get on public transportation, because the more people that use public transit, the less cars there are on the road. And so that can actually lessen congestion, whereas adding a lane of traffic does not do that.
Yeah. If you hate traffic, you should be pro-transit.
Of course, Wesley and I are geeking out about all this.
Looking at the $220 billion over 25 years, because you said 2050, that's about $10 billion a year. So it's still a good chunk. I mean, $40 million to do
way
a
less
parking
than
lot.
We spend on roads, but
$40 million a parking lot. So that's like how many parking lots? It's 22 parking lots.
We're not building any parking lots with this money. Please, no more parking lots with the money.
It makes me really excited because
I think Deborah Peoples would also be great from an East Fort Worth perspective.
Absolutely, but she's not on the RTC.
Okay, see, I don't, but I just think East Fort Worth has so much opportunity to connect because we're the side towards the Metroplex.
Yeah.
The West kind of feels a little bit more free and on its own, and probably a little bit more autonomous. But you can go into Arlington and not even really see the difference, because just like culturally, and it's just such a melting pot, pretty much from East Fort Worth all the way to get to about Grand Prairie, especially if you take those back roads all the way.
Yeah.
And there's so much potential to like help zip working class people to places within that area, with all the different factories, working opportunities there. Arlington, of course, with all what's going on there, would definitely be beneficial to be involved.
Yep. I always have to remind people that Arlington is the largest city in the country with no real form of public transit. And the next largest city with no real transit is 1/6 the size of Arlington. And they're so well positioned to have some of the best transit in the country. They're like smack in between. They have so many things right in a row that would be perfect. And so that's what excites me about this regional plan, is like, how do we connect Fort Worth to Denton? How do we connect everyone to Arlington? I want to get from here to Irving on a train.
Yeah.
I want to get all the way around anywhere that I need. Trinity Metro already has a plan to connect Granbury, or is it Cleburne?
TexRail goes out in that direction and eventually gets to that point.
Exactly. So even these towns that don't consider themselves like part of big infrastructure connectivity, they have a possibility to be a part of this too. Like, it's very exciting.
I think about when I was in Japan using transit, but like I think the idea of Arlington could be almost just like the spoke, in the sense of like it's the middle of the Metroplex. They have the big events, right? Taylor Swift coming to, or Beyonce coming to the Dallas Dome. I mean, imagine that's a hub with a real center, and we're zipping. We're going from Fort Worth. We're going from Fort Worth to Arlington to Irving. Like there could be so much potential.
Exactly.
Straight down from the airport.
Yeah.
I mean, it all could be very much connected. But to your point about the West, we don't want to not plan for the fact that we have like 50,000 people at Walsh Ranch that I would not like to continue to widen I-30 to accommodate. If we could have dedicated transit lanes in those improvements, then we can make sure.
And there's a campus being built over there, right?
Yes, UTA is building their West campus out there as well. Yeah. So there needs to be a train going west.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I do want to make clear about how hopeful this plan is that we need to keep an eye on what kinds of things they're thinking about for investing in, because I've been to several meetings recently where we're talking about the future of connectivity, and I've heard city staff people brag about drone deliveries and flying taxis and Waymos.
Well, that's that Alliance propaganda. That's
exactly. Why. That's what I was telling them. I was like, if Alliance wants it, fine. Keep that out of Near South Side. We know what good transit looks like. Every gimmick that people come up with is just a worse version of buses or trains or the things that we already know are proven. You just can't do better than those. And they're more cost effective too. Like, you can fit more people through on a train or a bus than you can basically anything else. So I hope that the money that this goes towards things that we know work. And that leads us into our wins, losses, and actions. And we have a very related win. And Anne is wearing a shirt to prove it.
Yes, absolutely. I ordered my shirt. So we have an ally organization in Dallas that advocates for public transit. Community Design Fort Worth does that with our transit committee here on the Fort Worth side of things. But Data, or Ride with Data, came up with these shirts when there was a bit of a threat to the funding for DART, which I think still continues, but there has been a win in that category.
And I just want to tell everyone, it's a shirt with a bus on it that says, "Come and take it."
Yes.
Classic. Brilliant.
It's very cool. I like it very much. But there was a win recently in that there were some public meetings about some funding cuts that DART was looking to make in order to kind of respond to the criticism that they were getting from some of their member cities. And I believe that they're still working through some of that. But one of the proposed cuts was to reduce the frequency of the TRE. The TRE only runs like every half hour, I think, during peak times. And I think they were planning to go to every hour all the time. I was hoping the change was that they were going to add Sunday service, but they were moving in the other direction. But there was a huge turnout at those public meetings, very much in favor of not reducing the TRE. Plus, they only have to pay 50% of that because that's a private partnership between Trinity Metro and DART.
Yep.
So the article that we are highlighting today as one of our wins is that they are not going to cut the TRE service. And so we're excited to hear that. And advocacy obviously works.
Yes.
Because these groups showing up at these meetings, talking about how they use these services, is what's making them make decisions.
And some quick context for how we got here is that the suburbs around Dallas were mad that they weren't getting enough transit, and so they wanted to pay DART less. And I'm like, but that's just going to guarantee worse transit. So they were trying to get legislators to cut DART funding.
And to be clear, they still are trying to
Yeah,
get
they-
that.
they are
because
still.
They're asking the governor to put it in the special session. But
Yep.
hopefully there's just too much nonsense going on to get him to pay attention to that.
Yep. But DART attempted to compromise with these suburban cities to, cut funding and be like, is this okay?
Yeah, they're trying to create like a 5% funding that goes into a fund that would just be available to some of those member cities to deliver to them what it is that they would like to see. And to your point about some of that being newfangled stuff, some of that I think is the kind of ride share type of things, the on-demand type of things that Arlington points to and says, but that's super expensive. If people are upset about subsidizing public transit, that's probably the most subsidized that you can get because
the least
per
effective,
ride
most
is way more expensive.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to say, reason I bring that up is that when you try and compromise with a bad faith actor, it's just a losing battle. And if you have advocacy, if you have people show up demanding what they want, it works. So,
and that goes for every story we've had.
Exactly.
From budget to
we have a lot of actions that people can take. So hopefully people are taking notes and figuring out where they're going to plug in.
Absolutely.
So earlier, Nydia shared in the Discord that there is an organization that funds opportunities for organizations led by people of color that are focused on the environment. And the organization is called Confluence. And so we thought that it would be, although the deadline for funding that they have available in this go-round has passed, I believe it's an organization that will probably fund things going into the future. And we have several organizations that affect and talk about the environment in Fort Worth that are run by people of color. So I think that this is something that they should know about. So that's why I wanted to talk about it. But also the fact that it is called Confluence reminded me of the fact that our local Streams and Valleys has a plan called Confluence, and it talks about connecting neighborhoods that in the past have not been connected to the river and all the improvements that happen along the Trinity River. And they just hired a new executive director in Laura Dean. And so I just added the link to the Streams and Valleys website that lets people know about the Confluence plan and the new executive director, because I think that this is a kind of pivotal moment in leadership in that organization that could continue to move us in a direction that serves all communities and all neighborhoods with the resources of being connected to parks and open space and the river.
And if you want to be a part of that Discord, the 817 Gather Discord, where we share stories, topics, and have community discussions, the link is also in the bio.
that's something that came up a bunch of times last night at the party of how do we know when the gather happens? And I said, we try to keep it on a regular cadence of the certain Sunday. Which Sunday is it? Like
third.
The third Sunday of the month. But every once in a while we've had to tweak it because of Father's Day or travel of one or all of us. So we do need to be better about letting people know how they can connect into that gather.
A recent article came out in Fort Worth Report mentioning that there are millions that are possible for Fort Worth public art that are going to be on the bond. But I just wanted to correct how the headline was written. It's not as if public art will be a separate thing that people can vote for on the bond. Every bond has a percentage that will go to public art. So for most things, it's 2%, and then for roads, it's 1%. And that is how the public art gets funded, which I think is a good way to do it because, the public art pieces are tied to what the bond is of. So if it's for roads, then, you're building a new road, there will be an installation. Like my friend Alicia Eggert just had an installation for a roundabout where it's 60 nows that spiral up. It's a good installation. But I just wanted to correct that because the way it's written seems odd, and so many of the comments are people like, why are we paying for this? And the way I always phrase it to people is that art is not the icing on the cake. It's not something bonus that makes it nice. Art is the sugar. It is the thing throughout everything that makes it worthwhile. And so I want people to keep that in mind when you see articles about public art. It's like we should be excited that everyone will have access to something that beautifies the city, something special and rare that makes the city greater.
Yeah, and I encourage everyone to go check out the public art collection in their website to see where it is, because every time I talk about it, people don't know where it's located, don't know that what's in the program and what's not, and it is spread throughout the city. And the engagement process that the public art team goes through to create those pieces and the efforts that they go to engage local artists, sometimes people who have never done public art before, I think is just a really great opportunity. And to your point about they brought it up as if it's, we're so excited about this public art. This is by ordinance the way we have funded public art for years. And every time there is somebody who wants, this is making a win into a loss, but every time there's somebody who wants to look at cutting that. And I think that it's important that those of us that see the value in public art show up and say that that needs to remain by ordinance part of the percentage of bond money that goes towards that public art program.
That might be your first turning a win to a loss, because you always like turning losses into a win.
Yeah.
So congrats.
Maybe I'm a little pessimistic about this.
Perfect.
So while we have some wins in the art category, there are some losses as well. And Wesley shared an article about the Community Arts Center, and Wesley and I are both very personally tied to the past, present, and future of the Community Arts Center. So Wesley, you want to let us know about potential losses in this category?
It's the same loss that there has been, but I was very glad that David Moreno, the arts and culture reporter at Fort Worth Report, put out this article about the lost opportunities for art in Fort Worth because we don't have this space. Like, there's so many people who got their career started there. It's been an incubator for basically every theater in town, and it's going to be a while before we have it back. And so it's just going to be sad to see the atrophy of the art scene and the opportunities, the stagnation, until we can get this resource back. And so if anyone else cares about this or just wants the city to be more vibrant, you can follow Support Fort Worth Art. That is my arts advocacy organization, because my mission in life is to get the Community Arts Center back to what we as a city deserve.
Yeah, and speaking of budget cuts, it's maintaining buildings like the Community Arts Center that didn't happen that got us to this point where it had to be closed because it was lacking $30 million plus necessary to bring it up to the standards in order for it to continue to go. So if you want funding for that, bring that up in the budget.
Yep.
I am just such a beautiful passion for the art center. That's Wesley's I want to make sure Fort Worth has the state of the art center that we deserve. And then Ann's I want multimodal transit everywhere that we can get through from the west to the east. And EJ's let's take Fort Worth from Governor Abbott. Like that's the crew right here. It's one big gumbo of change. So
but
really
it's
cool
awesome.
hearing y'all.
Yeah,
really cool hearing y'all's
passion.
And I'm wondering, like, I was like, dang, like I think it shows like why you're a great city council member and how why Wesley would be a great one as well one day if you ever considered it, because like you guys really know how to get in there and talk about it, about the things that we need. So I really admire that, seeing that today.
Appreciate
it's fantastic.
I do have another. It was a potential loss. Luckily, it doesn't look like it will be anymore. But the city was thinking about spending $58 million to gravel alleys because they were worried about weeds. That's so fucking stupid.
I have so many feelings about this because literally for 7 years on the city council, the maintenance of alleys comes up every year. And I think those poor city staff just pull out the report that they've done from year to year to year, because there are alleys in the city that get maintained by the city, and it's not even a very large fraction of the alleys. For most alleys that exist, it's the responsibility of the adjacent property owner to take care of the alley behind their house. Do people do that? Not always. Does Encore sometimes come through and just clear out everything that's in there that might touch a power line? Yeah, that happens. So it's a hodgepodge, and when people complain and then they want the city to do it, and then they look at how much it costs for the city to do it, and then this was like a fix, but no, it's not a fix.
It's just more maintenance that you have to cover, and it's more harmful to the environment.
Yeah.
I'm ignorant here. Do big cities talk about this? Like, is this a big, or
I
this,
don't know.
This
I
feels
think we
like
need
small
to Google
town
that.
Texas.
Yeah.
This feels like a small town Texas conversation.
But I think that's the problem. I think a small town solution was like, well, let's just gravel the alleyways. It's like, no, we're the 11th largest city. This is the stupidest possible way that you could quote unquote solve this problem.
I mean, I think it just needs to be more intentional. There are some alleys that exist in locations where they could provide access to the rear of properties, and you could have more like gentle density built there, and then people could access the rear of the property. There's other places where they should absolutely remain green, and I know people who have planted butterfly gardens that attract butterflies and bees and all those things.
The top comment on the article when this was posted on Facebook is, we should turn all the alleys into native pollinator gardens. And I'm like, of course.
There's a woman in Ryan Place that absolutely did that. And every year she had to like make sure that the city didn't come and mow down the plants that were there for the bees and the butterflies.
I just feel like sometimes our council agenda feels like a church's like little board retreat, and they're talking about the lawn and the kids going to get their things for some play. Do we got the candy bars to sell for the marching band? Like, why does it just feels a little small town?
Yeah.
I'm just like interested.
It is council members that are talking to citizens, and these are the things that often get brought up as a complaint by a citizen, and a council member wants to be responsive to the concerns of the community. But because we don't get out in front of it and have a plan that is more big city minded and work with the community around bringing something that is beneficial to them, we continue to just deal with the one-off complaint without a solution.
Exactly. But luckily, it sounds like that's not moving forward.
Yeah,
so we're not going to waste $58 million on a very stupid plan.
I heard from someone at the city that they are not moving forward with that. So.
And it also just sounds like this is why it's so important to actively be involved and share your opinions about your city and show up to meetings and give public comments, because in a way they listen.
They do listen. If somebody shows up and asks for them to do something stupid, they often do it.
Yeah.
Okay, and now into actions. So we spoke about the Tarrant County Commissioners Court is wanting to reduce the voting locations. They were supposed to do it in September. It sounds like now they're moving it up to Tuesday, August 19th. So if you're listening to this right when it comes out, the action is email your county commissioner and tell them that is a horrible idea and don't do it.
And if you want to go speak at the Commissioners Court meeting, I think you have to sign up by Monday at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so if you want to speak on Tuesday, you're going to have to sign up by 4 o'clock on the day that you're listening to this podcast.
Yep.
And if it pushes to September, now start pressing your city council members, because last time we did a resolution about racial gerrymandering. I think this is kind of in the same ballgame. Our city got to quit giving up our power to the suburbs, and this has been dangerous the whole way, and there hasn't been enough accountability. So I hope it gets pushed to September, because they know when the people get together, power starts getting made.
And then there's 2 opportunities to attend some events that Community Design Fort Worth is part of. We have our transit mixer this week on Wednesday from 4:30 to 6:30 at Acre Distilling. We're going to be kind of collecting information about what people would like to learn more about transit in order to plan and implement our Transit Academy. And then on Thursday, Community Design Fort Worth collaborates with AIA Fort Worth for design talks, and the design talk that's coming up on Thursday at Texas Wesleyan, all of this will be in the show notes as well, is a design talk where they're going to be talking about design justice. So that may be of interest to some of our viewers as well.
I like it. And also on Saturday, August 23rd, Steer Fort Worth is having their annual Civic Summit. So it is a half-day conference about some of the most pressing issues in Fort Worth.
And I think I've been on a panel or part of that for like the last, I don't know,
I got
how
invited
many years.
and uninvited.
Well, I was invited, but I'm going to be out of town, so I am unable to participate. But a couple of my board members are going to be involved in that, so I think it'll be great.
Yeah, so the theme this year is building a resilient city. So they have panels about what a healthy city looks like, navigating uncertainty in education, the climate in our new climate, and beyond the ballot. So what can you do to get involved outside of just voting? So it'll be a great one.
Since I'm not on the panel, my answer is simple. It's you got to vote for a progressive city and all your problems are solved. So at the end of the day, that's the answer.
It does make it easier, but when they don't get elected, then what do you do? So
try again.
We'll
you get every 2 years.
But there's a lot to be. I mean, we're literally in the action segment. We're telling people what they can do outside of voting. So yeah, that will be a Civic Summit will be 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Simplify in the Stockyard. So go check out Steer Fort Worth's social media to buy your ticket.
And take the Orange Line.
Yes, that's literally what we're telling people to do. Park at Northside Station, Orange Line to there, so you don't have to pay for parking.
There you go.
All right, beautiful people. There you have it. Another episode of the 817 podcast. Shout out to everyone who showed up to the 5th year anniversary pod party. The community is real. You listening means the world to us. Let's go from listeners to leaders. Let's continue to show out. Thank you so much.